All right, old school NBA fans, self-research, NBA facts. I got another video here for you. As always, I want to say thanks to anybody watching my videos, subscribes to my channel. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. It helped me out a lot. Hit the like button. By all means, please do that. I really enjoy the interaction, all the comments. You guys are great. All the encouragement that you guys give me, terrific. There was somebody in the comments that said that the 2004 Pistons were the best defensive team of all time. So that got me really curious. How do you quantify what was the best defensive team of all time? You can't just go by lowest points allowed, different eras, different rules, all that kind of stuff. The best way that I could see is you got to take it all into consideration. You take who was on the team, how they did in the regular season and the playoffs. You can't just go by playoffs. You know, I hate when people do that. They'll just use the playoff run. Well, that's why they're the best. No, that is certainly a bigger part of it, absolutely, because there's more on the line, no question. But if the regular season is meaningless, then what? It's just like training camp? It's just preseason? No, the regular season matters too. Just because the modern NBA treats the regular season like it's training camp and it's just something for people to try to get awards and, you know, they don't feel like it, will take a day off, you know, whatever. And I don't believe for a minute, you know, Gilbert Arenas said that, you know, oh, it's the management sometimes that tells the players, you take them, crap. If you went to them and said, there's no way I'm missing this game, you'd be in the game. The management is not going to tell you that you have to sit out. If you're healthy and good to go, even if you're not, you say, hey, I'm good to go and I'm playing in this game, you'd be playing. I don't believe any of that for a second. You know, that's just propaganda. That's Gilbert Arenas trying to put down any other content creator who's not an ex-player. He thinks he's got the inside track on all this stuff, but he's the only one that has that opinion. So many other people, ex-players, do not feel that way. You know, I mean, does Gilbert Arenas know what happened in the 60s and 70s better than any of us? No way. How could he? You know, just because he knows the ins and outs of the business side of it? No. What happened on the court is for all to see. It's not just for the ex-players. I mean, they might have a different opinion when you're comparing one player to another about, hey, you know, he was really tougher to guard, or, you know, this guy, man, he was really sneaky good at these passes or something like that. Okay, maybe some of that stuff I could see. But overall, no, I don't buy that for a second. But anyway, best defensive team of all time. So I looked at the defensive rating, the opponent's points per game, you know, points allowed, you know, who was on the team. Do you have any first team all defensive players, that kind of thing. And how did they do, and say in a playoffs versus what their season average points were, or against your average points allowed from the regular season. Other than that, I don't really know how to gauge it, but I think I have about 12 teams here that are contenders, and I do not know the answer to this question. I'll leave it to you guys in the comments to tell me when this video at the end, you tell me. I don't know. I mean, it's very, very close and tight. It really is. So I'll just try to go in chronological order. Anything before 1969, I'm kind of unsure on. You know, I'm sure like Politicus Rex and say that, you know, the 1955 St. Louis Hawks was a great team defensively, or one of the Celtics teams in the 60s. You know, yeah, there's a lot of evidence that the Celtics in the 60s had some great defensive teams. But I was looking at it really just from 1969, when all defense came out, to now. That covers the last 55 years. So anyway, the first team that I want to take a look at is the 1970 New York Knicks. Now, this was a great defensive team. The 1970 Knicks were first in defensive rating. They were first in opponents' points per game, which was pretty high, 115 on the dot to be exact. They had 3 first-team all-defensive players, and that was only done about 6-7 times ever. That would have been Dave DeBusschere, Willis Reed, and Walt Frazier. Now, of the 21 games that 21 playoff games they played, 8 teams went over their season average of points per game. And of Baltimore, Milwaukee, and the Lakers, their 3 opponents, only 3 of the 21 games did they go over their season average of points per game. Baltimore once, and the Lakers 2 games, they were over their season average. So the 1970 Knicks is certainly a viable contender. I mean, they were first in defensive rating, first in opponents' points per game, 3 first-team all-defensive players. I mean, that's really tough. It really is. The next one is the 1976 Boston Celtics. They also had 3 first-team all-defenders. They were 6th, though, in opponents' points per game at 103.9. They were 3rd in defensive rating. In the playoffs, of the 18 playoff games they had, 6 teams went over Boston's average of 103.9 allowed, and 5 games they went over their season average. I think Phoenix had 3 of them, and Buffalo had the other 2, something like that. So, very good, but I think the 70 Knicks is better, no doubt. The 83 Philly 76ers. Now, they had a great run in the playoffs. They were, I think 12-1 in the playoffs. They were 7th in opponents' points per game, 5th in defensive rating. So right there, you can do better. They had 3 first-team all-defensive players, though. Moses Malone, Bobby Jones, and Maurice Cheeks. Now, of their 13 games, 4 of the games in the playoffs went over Philly's average of points per game, and 4 teams went over their scoring average in the regular season. So far, I'd still say the 70 Knicks are the best. The 89 Pistons. This is a really good team. They were 2nd in points per game, 2nd in opponents' points per game, 3rd in defensive rating. They had 2 first-team all-defensive players, Joe Dumars and Dennis Rodman. Of their 17 games, only 2 teams got over the 100.8 points allowed, only 2 out of 17. And none of the 17 games did a team hit their season points per game average. So that's pretty strong. It really is. The 1990 Pistons actually might have been better. They were 1st in opponents' points per game and 2nd in defensive rating. They allowed 8 teams did hit over the 98.3 points, but none of the 19 games that they played did anybody hit their season point per game average. They had 2 first-team all-defensive players, Dumars and Rodman, and the defensive player of the year, Dennis Rodman. So with that being said, it's really close, I think, between the 1990 Pistons and the 1970 Knicks. Those 2 so far, that's probably what I would go with. 1996 Bulls. They were 3rd in opponents' points per game and 1st in defensive rating. In their 18 playoff games they played, only 3 teams got over the 92.9 points allowed that the Bulls did, and only 3 teams hit their season average of points per game. They had 3 first-team all-defensive players, Pippen, Jordan, and Rodman, and they had 2 players who had won Defensive Player of the Year, Jordan and Rodman. And to me, that's strong right there. So far, I'd say 96 Bulls, the 90 Pistons, or the 70 Knicks are the 3 I'd look at. The 97 Bulls, they were good, but I just think the 96 Bulls were just better, number-wise, everything-wise. So I'm not even going to get into that one. Okay, the 1999 Spurs. They were 3rd in points per game allowed and 1st in defensive rating. Of their games that they played, was it 17? Of their 17 games, 7 of them hit the 84.7 points that the Spurs allowed. 7 went over that of the 17, but only 3 of the 17 got their season average in points per game. So I'd say the 99 Spurs are really good. Duncan made first team all defense, but I just don't think that they're as good as the other teams. I included the 03 Spurs. They were 3rd in points per game allowed, 3rd in defensive rating. They had a first-team all-defense, Duncan second team, and Bowen. But too many teams hit over their points per game allowed. So I don't think the 03 Spurs even worth talking about. The 05 Spurs, they were really good because they were first in opponents' points per game, first in defensive rating. They had 2 first-team all-defensive players, Duncan and Bruce Bowen. Of the 23 playoff games, though, 17 of them went over their season average of points allowed, and nine times the teams went over their season average of points per game. So the 05 Spurs in the regular season, great. Playoffs, a little bit of a letdown. Not letdown, I mean, they still won the championship, and every one of these teams won the championship. Because no matter how good you were defensively, you weren't good enough if you didn't win it. And I think that's the last team. So I think you have the 1970 Knicks, the 1990 Pistons, who actually were probably a little bit better, maybe? I don't know. Because in the 89 Pistons, only 2 of the 17 games did a team go over their season average of 100.8 points allowed, and that's the lowest on the list. Nobody allowed, only 2, and nobody hit their season average. But in the regular season, they were second in points per game allowed and third in defensive rating. It's tough. So 89 Pistons, 90 Pistons, 96 Bulls, 1970 Knicks. To me, those are the 4 teams. The 2004 Pistons, I don't even know if I got into them or not. Maybe I didn't. 2004 Pistons. Man, I'm sorry about that. They were second in opponents' points per game, second in defensive rating. I did not have Rasheed Wallace the whole year. They acquired him, at the trade deadline. 84.8 points per game allowed. That's low. But 7 of the 23 games they played, teams hit that 84.8 points per game allowed. But of the 23 games, only 1 time did a team get over their season average. But the 89 Pistons, none did. The 1990 Pistons, none did. So that's why, I don't know. I mean, the 04 Pistons got to be in the running. They only had 1 player make all defense, and that was Ben Wallace. He didn't win Defensive Player of the Year, but he won it the 2 years before and the 2 years after. So, they're certainly among them, but definitively, I just don't have the evidence to say they were the best team. I don't know. It's really close. If I had to pick one out of everything I've seen, I would probably go with either the 1990 Pistons or the 1970 Knicks. But I'm leaning more towards the 90 Pistons, and the 96 Bulls got to be in there too because they had 3 first-team all-defensive. I know the 70 Knicks did too. 2 players who won Defensive Player of the Year. Of course, in 1970, they didn't have such a thing. Really, really close. Hard to say. Anyway, if you guys want to leave in the comments who you think is the best defensive team of all time, and please give a reason why. Don't just say because, they shut this team down. When you get into the evidence of it and the numbers, it's hard to say for sure. It's just going to come down to what you value more, I think. But from what I'm looking at, I would say the 90 Pistons, the 96 Bulls, and the 1970 Knicks would be the 3 best teams, with the 89 Pistons and the 04 Pistons being right there too. To me, those would be the 5 greatest defensive teams of all time. 2004 Pistons, the 89 Pistons, the 1990 Pistons, the 1970 Knicks, and the 1996 Bulls. Those got to be the 5 best defensive teams of all time. Going by the numbers, how good they were in the regular season and in the playoffs combined. So anyway, that's it for this video. As usual, thanks for watching, and until next time.